This is the first episode in what will probably be a long series on this channel, The Complete Story of. In this playlist, I will talk about the full story of an individual Riordanverse character, including their backstory. I'm not just going to be doing characters who are, dead, but this seemed like a good place to start. Please feel free to leave suggestions in the comments for other characters you want me to cover, but note that I will be hesitant to make videos on characters who are likely to make an appearance in the next book. That means the backstories of Will, Nico, Lester, and Meg will not be made into videos until after the Tower of Nero is released. Also, huge shout out to the Riordan wiki, because I never would have been able to make this video if not for the information on there. With that, let's jump right into the complete story of Luke Castellan. Now, quick backstory. Once upon a time, there was this big baddie named Kronos. He ate his children, then his children overthrew him, and they supposedly cast him to Tartarus forever, but not so much. Now, as is so often the case in anything related to Greek mythology, Luke's backstory begins long before he was born. In fact, it begins all the way back in the 1940s when the Oracle of Delphi issued the great prophecy. You know the one. A half-blood of the eldest gods shall reach 16 against all odds and see the world in endless sleep. A hero's soul cursed blade shall reap. A single choice shall end his days, Olympus to preserve or raise. This prophecy was issued right after World War II and claimed that a child of Zeus, Poseidon, or Hades would reach the age of 16 and make a choice that saves or destroys the world. Because the prophecy coming to pass could possibly mean the end of the world as we know it, the Big Three made a pact not to father any more half-blood children. Problem is, at the time that the prophecy was issued, Hades already had 2 demigod children who were under the age of 16. The oracle warns him that he has to make a decision and act if he wants to avoid anything bad happening to his children or their mother. But because Maria D'Angelo is stubborn AF and is also not afraid to call Zeus an idiot, she refuses the solutions to the problem that Hades offers. Zeus ends up killing Maria with a lightning bolt. But in fairness, he wasn't trying to kill her, he was just trying to kill literal children. Sorry, Zeus, there's no way of saying this that makes you look good. Now, you all may be wondering what this has to do with Luke. We'll get there, I promise. Anyways, right after Maria dies, the Oracle appears to Hades, basically just to say, I told you so. Okay, side note, why would you do that? Like, she made the conscious decision to appear to this immortal, all-powerful deity right after his girlfriend died just to, what? Gloat? I don't know. If you're the Oracle of Delphi, I just feel like you gotta be a bit smarter than that. Anyways, Hades curses the Oracle to forever deliver prophecies, even after she dies, and all that is left is a rotting corpse. This is why the Oracle is a creepy, mummified body during the vast majority of the PJO books. Now we actually arrive at the part of the story where Luke becomes relevant. Many years later, in Westport, Connecticut, a mortal woman named Castellan, who can see through the mist rather well, and the Greek god Hermes have a kid named Luke, with sandy blonde hair and blue eyes. They live happily for about a year after that. But then, Hermes, May, and baby Luke go to Camp Half-Blood, because May wants to become the next host for the Oracle of Delphi. Bear in mind that neither May nor Hermes were aware of the curse that Hades placed on the Oracle. Because Hades' curse also forbade the Oracle from passing into a new host body, things didn't go so well for Miss Castellan. Instead of hosting the Oracle shows her images of her son growing up to betray his friends. These images break May's sanity, and as a result, Hermes leaves her, as gods tend to do. As a kid, Luke grew up with a very mentally unstable mother. Now, most of the time, May was a loving mother, baking cookies, making sandwiches, and preparing Kool-Aid for Luke. She loves him so much, and Luke does know that, but she is also wildly unstable. She's not all there and has violent fits as a result of the Oracle breaking her sanity. This would obviously terrify young Luke, who would often go in the closet to hide from his mom, who would start screaming horrible things about her son's terrible fate. Now, when I first started making this video, I thought it would be a good opportunity to analyze Luke's character a little more. Why he started working for Kronos. We know when he started doing so, yes, but what sets him apart from other demigods? It seems that right from the get-go, Luke has more resentment against the Olympians than any other demigod, even long before his betrayal. But why? He's hardly the first demigod to grow up in a tough home situation without his godly parent around. Well, it's certainly a culmination of factors, but I think a big one is that Luke knew his dad was an all-powerful, godly being from the start, unlike Percy, Bianca, Nico, Hazel, Frank, Piper, and Leo, who all found out when they were 10 or older. Luke resented his dad for never helping him during the years that he spent hiding and cowering from his own mother, even though he prayed to his dad every day, begging him to help him. But Hermes knew Luke's fate and was not allowed to interfere. When Luke was only 9, he finally ran away. He didn't want to, as he dearly loved his mom, but she was violent, unstable, and dangerous to live with, giving Luke no choice. He spent a few years on the streets alone, homeless, and fighting to stay alive. When he was around 12 years old, he met a 10-year-old girl named Thalia Grace in a dragon's cave outside Charleston. She was a demigod too, the daughter of Zeus. So, Luke and Thalia teamed up to stay alive, traveling across the US and barely surviving several encounters with monsters for about 2 years. It is unknown if they were a couple during this time, though it seems to be hinted in Luke's diary and the demigod diaries that they were. Or at the very least that Luke liked Thalia romantically. Another story from the Demigod Diaries. When Luke was 14 and Thalia 12, they had an encounter with a goat named Amalthea, sacred to Zeus. Amalthea directed them to an old abandoned house. Luke is able to unlock the door and break into the house since his dad is the god of thieves, but then it seems that Luke and Thalia are trapped inside. After not getting killed by creepy monsters called Lucrode, they meet an elderly demigod son of Apollo named Halcyon Green. He has been trapped in his childhood home as punishment for saving a little girl who was about to get hit by a car. As the son of Apollo, he had the gift of prophecy and could see the future, so he told the girl she was destined to die and ended up saving her life. The girl gave Hal a celestial bronze dagger as thanks, but Apollo was pretty unhappy about Hal meddling with fate, so he trapped Hal in his house, where he was destined to lure demigods in for their food, and then the Lucrode monsters would eat the demigods at sundown. Apollo also told Hal that his punishment would end on the day that the demigods who came in successfully accessed the treasure in the mansion. After arguing with and then feeling sorry for Hal, Luke successfully accesses the treasure. Thalia claims a weapon inside, a replica of Aegis, a shield embedded with the face of Medusa that can turn into a bracelet. Hal reads the futures of Luke and Thalia. For Luke, he foresees fire. He also foresees that Luke's choices will change the world, and that Luke will betray his friends. Since Hal saw fire, Luke works to create Greek fire in an effort to burn the house down and kill the Lucrode, since the Lucrode can't be harmed by any weapons. Hal sacrifices himself for Luke and Thalia's escape, also giving Luke the dagger that the little girl gave him, which is good because Luke's current best weapon had been a golf club. Since Hal dies, his punishment did end on the day that the treasure was accessed, just as Apollo predicted. Grief-stricken Thalia and Luke are walking the streets that night when they encounter a 7-year-old girl with blonde hair and gray eyes, Annabeth Chase. At first, poor little Annabeth is terrified that Luke and Thalia are monsters like the ones she has encountered as a demigod. But the two of them assure her that they are not monsters, they're demigods like her. Luke gives Annabeth the bronze dagger as a promise that she, Thalia, and Luke will always be a family. Later that night, Luke thinks about Hal's predictions. He doesn't like what Hal told him about his future, but he decides he doesn't have time to worry about it right now. He has to survive day by day. A few weeks later, the trio is in really bad shape. Thalia has a leg injury from a monster attack, and the three of them are starving and in need of shelter. Even though Luke really doesn't want to go back to his childhood home, he has no choice. He tries to sneak in and grab some food and medicine without his mom noticing, but Hermes happens to be there, and Luke ends up meeting his dad for the first time whether he likes it or not. Hermes is greatly saddened that Luke hates him so much and tries to explain that he couldn't interfere with fate and had to let Luke walk his own path. Luke is still pretty angry though and refuses to listen to anything his dad tells him. Meanwhile, May patches up Thalia's injured leg. When they're done, Luke storms out with Thalia and Annabeth, much to his mother's and Hermes' dismay. After that, according to Thalia, Luke was always more reckless, constantly picking fights with monsters like he had something to prove. The trio also encountered the Hunters of Artemis, who offered for Thalia to join their ranks. Thalia refuses, not wanting to leave Luke and Annabeth behind. Zoe Nightshade, the lieutenant of Artemis, warns Thalia that Luke will let her down one day and she'll regret her decision, which is why Thalia resents Zoe and the Hunters. Eventually, the trio was found by everyone's favorite satyr, Grover Underwood. Grover tries to bring them to Camp Half-Blood. On their way, though, they end up getting trapped in a Cyclops lair. The Cyclops imitates the voices of the people that his victims love most in order to lure them to their deaths. Luke, Thalia, and Grover end up getting captured, but Annabeth frees them by stabbing the Cyclops in the foot with her knife. The four of them make it to Half-Blood Hill where they're being chased by monsters. Thalia sacrifices herself to save her friends and gets badly wounded. As she's dying, her dad Zeus turns her into a tree to keep her alive. This tree forms a magical barrier that protects the camp from monsters. Luke grieves Thalia and misses her a lot. He blames the gods for letting Thalia sort of die, just as he blames the gods for all his other problems. I mean, that's not totally crazy. It is sort of their fault. 3 years later, when Luke is 17, Hermes finally gives Luke a quest. Luke's task was to find a golden apple from the tree in the Garden of Hesperides, guarded by the dragon Ladon. Luke is insulted at being given a task that has already been given to a hero in the past, Hercules, as he says that there is no honor in doing what has already been done, and is mad that his dad couldn't think of a better task to give him. He fails the quest, and Ladon scratches him across the face, giving him his famous scar, though Luke does manage to take one of Ladon's claws. This quest was the straw that broke the camel's back for Luke. He goes from strongly resenting the Olympians to wanting to wipe them out and get rid of them. The Titan Lord Kronos begins to whisper in Luke's dreams, convincing Luke to help him rise. Kronos also gives Luke his famous sword, Backbiter, half steel, half celestial bronze. Annabeth later confesses that she did notice Luke had always acted a little different and more distant after his quest, but since he was her childhood hero, she never thought much of this. When Luke is around 19, Kronos also instructs him to steal Zeus's Master Bolt and Hades' Helm of Darkness to start war between the gods, so that they'll be more divided and easier to conquer when Kronos rises. Anyways, when Zeus realizes that his Master Bolt is missing, he sends out Artemis, Ares, and Athena to look for it. Ares ends up finding Luke and they duel for the bolt. Ares wins, but Luke is able to convince him to, not smite him. With the help of Kronos whispering in his mind, Luke convinces Ares to leave the location of the bolt a mystery to cause a war between the gods. Ares, being the god of war, very much likes this idea, and he lets Luke go, but Ares does take the bolts in the helm with him. Kronos, angered that Ares beat Luke, punishes Luke with horrible nightmares to make him fear the Titan Lord, so that he'll never again let him down. And all that was just the backstory. Everything I just talked about occurred before the events of the Lightning Thief. In The Lightning Thief, Luke befriends Percy at Kronos' request, since Percy is a powerful demigod. He teaches 12-year-old Percy sword fighting and takes him under his wing. He later summons a hellhound to attack the kid in a game of Capture the Flag, as part of his plan to make the camp activities director Chiron believe that the camp is unsafe for young Percy. Nobody knows that Luke summoned the hellhound, though. When Percy, Annabeth, and Grover are about to head off to the underworld, Luke gives Percy magical winged shoes, supposedly to help him, though in reality, the shoes were designed to send Percy off to Tartarus, the deepest, most inescapable part of the underworld. And since Luke planned for Ares to have given Percy the backpack with the bolts inside, the shoes would hence drive the Master Bolt into Tartarus. This plan didn't work out, though. Grover instead wore the winged shoes, and Percy and Annabeth were able to save Grover before he was pulled into Tartarus. Percy gets back to camp after succeeding in his quest and stopping the war between the gods, unknowing of Luke's role in the whole situation and believing that Ares was a real mastermind. As revealed in The Last Olympian, it was around this time that Luke convinced Selena Beauregard, daughter of Aphrodite, to help him. He charmed her and convinced her that she'd be doing something good. When her conscience cleared and she realized that she was hurting her friends by being a spy for Luke, she tried to back out. But Luke threatened that if she did, he'd hurt Charles Beckendorf, her crush and eventually boyfriend. At a certain point in The Lightning Thief, Percy also sees the three Fates cutting a string of someone's life at a fruit stand. He assumed this was his life, but 4 years later, he finally realizes that it was really Luke's life. In the final chapter, Luke takes Percy into the woods, reveals his true nature, and poisons the son of Poseidon with his scorpion, telling him, "There's a new golden age coming, Percy. You won't be part of it." Percy ends up surviving, though, and that's the last we hear of Luke until Book 2, Sea of Monsters, which takes place a year later. In this book, Luke commands an army of monsters on a ship known as the Princess Andromeda. He also poisons Thalia's tree to destroy the magical barrier around Camp Half-Blood and wipe out the camp. The plan was for both sides, Luke and his monsters, and Percy and company, to search for the Golden Fleece, a magical fleece capable of healing every living thing. He wanted them to heal Thalia's tree, and as a result, Thalia, awakening her from her alive but sleeping state. But then to give the fleece to him to heal Kronos. Luke believes that Thalia would side with him and with Kronos after everything the gods have done. Also, consider the great prophecy, claiming that a child of Zeus, Poseidon, or Hades would reach the age of 16 and make a decision that saves or destroys the world. Luke believes that if Thalia is a child of the prophecy, Luke can convince her to make the decision to destroy the world and give rise to the Titans. Luke also frames Chiron for the poisoning of Thalia's tree, and Chiron loses his job as a result. After Percy and company ignore the rules to go find the Golden Fleece and save their pal Grover, they find Hermes, who gives them some cool magical items to help them and asks Percy to please tell Luke to stop working for Kronos and that his dad loves him. Later, the group lands on the Princess Andromeda and winds up captured. They try to tell Luke what Hermes told them, but Luke doesn't listen. During a confrontation between Luke and Percy, Percy tricks Luke into admitting that Chiron was framed for the poisoning of Thalia's tree and Chiron is rehired. Percy challenges Luke to a duel. Luke kinda has to accept or risk looking weak in front of a monster army, and he wins almost immediately, but Percy and the gang are saved by Chiron and the party ponies. 6 months later, in the Titan's Curse, Luke tricks Annabeth into holding up the sky, thus keeping her captive. Annabeth begs Luke to help her, and Luke's pretty much just like, LOL, try not to die. We see him later on with Atlas and Dr. Thorne summoning skeletal warriors to hunt Percy down. Finally, we see him on the top of the mountain where Annabeth and Artemis are being held captive, and he and Thalia duel. Thalia ends up disarming him and winning. Defenseless and about to be thrown off a cliff by his once best friend, Luke tries to taunt Thalia and says that she'd never have the guts to kill him after all they'd been through, while Annabeth is there in the background screaming at Thalia not to kill him. Annabeth is still clinging to the possibility that she can save him and convince him to do what is right. When Thalia takes her gaze off of Luke to argue with Annabeth about this, Luke tries to grab Thalia's spear, and Thalia instinctively throws him off the cliff. He is presumably dead. Later on, Annabeth tells Percy that she can sense that Luke is still alive. At first, Percy thinks that Annabeth is just in denial of the truth, but later on, Percy's dad, Poseidon, tells him that Luke really isn't dead. 6 months after that, the events from Battle of the Labyrinth take place. At some point between Titan's Curse and Battle of the Labyrinth, Luke finds Annabeth at her home in California. He tells Annabeth that he wants to run away with her again, and that Kronos is just using him as a stepping stone. He seems genuinely scared, and like he really does want out of this whole situation. When Annabeth refuses to run away with him, Luke gets mad and leaves. Luke also seems to be having serious doubts about joining Kronos, as he doesn't want Kronos to possess his body, but Kronos convinces him to bathe in the river Styx, which requires briefly returning to his mother's place and gaining her blessing. This makes him invulnerable, except for one fatal weak spot on his body, his left armpit. his version of an Achilles heel. In order to survive bathing in the Styx, Luke had to concentrate on what kept him anchored to the world, his vulnerable point. He imagined Annabeth and Thalia and the times that he spent with them. In BOTL, Percy sees Luke in a dream. Luke shows more of a moral compass this time. He seems nicer and less willing to do horrible things for the Titan army. Kelly the Monster even points out that he seems a lot softer and interrogates/taunts him about whether or not he's having doubts about joining the Titan army. He tries to talk to Annabeth again later in the book in the arena when Percy battles Ethan Nakamura and Antaeus, but fails when she and the others escape. The last time we see Luke in that book, he is possessed by Kronos with those signature golden eyes. Yeah, that iconic scene when Rachel hits the Lord of Time in the eye with a blue plastic hairbrush. Finally, 1 year later, the events of The Last Olympian. This book reveals a lot more about Luke's backstory, including the whole situation with his mom, the first time he met Hermes, and the first time he met Annabeth. But given that's all backstory, we've already covered it. Luke spends most of his time in this book possessed by Kronos, with Luke himself only very temporarily regaining control once in a while. You can tell who is in control based on the color of their eyes. Blue for Luke, golden for Kronos. It is also revealed that Kronos is simply using Luke's body as a transition to reach his true form. Now, I'm not going to be talking about what Kronos did in The Last Olympian because that's Kronos, not Luke. But near the end of the book, Kronos, Percy, Annabeth, Grover, and Ethan all arrive in the throne room at Mount Olympus. Percy convinces Ethan to turn on Kronos at the last second, causing Ethan's own death. Percy and Kronos duel for a time, then Kronos and Annabeth fight. Annabeth using the dagger that Luke gave her all those years ago. She manages to bring Kronos to a standstill. She says, "Family, Luke, you promised." Reminding Luke of his promise to Annabeth is enough to get him to regain control of his body. He warns that Kronos is almost ready to assume his true form, and he won't need Luke's body anymore. The knife clatters onto the ground, and Percy grabs it. Luke tells Percy to give him the knife. Only he knows his Achilles heel, and only he can kill Kronos without Kronos regaining control and defending himself. Percy knows that it's a stupid thing to do, and will most likely cause the end of the world, but he gives Luke the knife. Luke stabs himself in his one weak spot, killing himself and, in effect, Kronos. Annabeth tells him that he's a hero and he'll go to Elysium. Luke says that he's going to try for the Owls of the Blessed. Then he asks Annabeth if she loved him. She replies that she loved him as a brother. Luke asks Percy to make sure that no more demigods like him, Ethan, and the Unclaimed Ones feel so abandoned by their godly parents that they betray Olympus, like he did. Percy promises that he won't let it happen again, and to keep that promise, he makes the gods make some improvements in the way that they treat their kids. The great prophecy ended up coming true. A half-blood of the eldest gods shall reach 16 against all odds. This showdown happened on the morning of Percy, the son of Poseidon's, 16th birthday. And see the world in endless sleep? This line in particular has nothing to do with Luke. A hero's soul cursed blade shall reap. Annabeth's dagger was cursed, because it represented the promise that Luke made to her that they would always be a family. When he betrayed her, the dagger became cursed. A single choice shall in his days Olympus to preserve or raise. Percy's choice, to give Luke the knife, ended Luke's days and saved Olympus. That's it for the complete story of Luke Castellan. Let me know in the comments what other characters you want me to make a video like this on. With that, peace out!